All right, let me turn on my camera. So, hi everyone, case building time is over. Before we start, I'd like to do a quick roll call for everyone participating in this round. We'll start with the debaters. Opening government, are you here and complete?
Yes, we are.
Cool. Opening opposition, here and complete?
Here and complete, Kak.
CJ, here and complete?
Here and complete, Kak.
Cool. Closing opposition, here and complete?
Yes, Kak.
All right. Moving on to the judges. I have Ahmad with me. Ahmad, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, Kak.
Anggito?
Here.
Clifford?
Yes, I'm here.
Cool. And Muhammad Hendrawan?
I'm here, Kak.
All right, so since everyone's present, we can immediately start our debate. Before we get into that, I'd like to remind everyone to turn on your camera since this is a live stream round. So it'd be good if the watchers can see who's talking. On top of that, please give an offer POI during your speech. It can be a crucial tipping point if in a case of a really tight debate. So make sure you do that. Also, before you start your substantive, tell the rest of the debate how you'd like to receive that POI. If not, we'll just assume that you would like to receive it through chat to not disturb you when you're speaking. Speech times strictly 7 points. After that, I will stop writing and I'll call in for order. I guess that is all. Feel free to disclose your gender pronouns, but it's not mandatory, only if you want to and if you feel like it. Without any further ado, calling the Prime Minister to open the debate. Here.
Okay, am I audible, everyone?
You are audible.
Okay, let me set my timer first. Okay, if you want to POI, just unmute yourself. I will not looking at the chat. Okay, so I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The bond of the flat model panels is there are things that exist because of the bond with the flat model. That one, flat model are intended to erasing the toxic culture of hierarchy in companies, which causing a pressure for worker, for example, worker that under the hierarchy with the expectation that these workers are actually being oppressed by their higher ups, and in that expectation, it actually create something that burdening for this worker and in the end of the day, it makes the productivity of this worker is actually going to be bad because of this toxic company culture. But the ideas of fact model, the existence of why this fact model exists, we believe right now is something that is not being resolved or solved by this flat model itself. We believe that toxic hierarchy, even if they're in the flat model business or in the flat model corporation, is still existing with the existence of the seniority culture on how that people who got in first there, basically knowing the culture more and thinking that the newcomer or let's say the under person from them actually still the low in that idea. We believe that flat model actually not helping solving these issues, and that's why on opening government we believe that we could get the decision of the glorification of the flat model. Why so? Because we believe that in the framing of opening government, we believe that in the reality, hierarchy still managed to actually happen in flat model also. How? Because what I said to you before, the seniority still exists, making the flat model is actually something that unmanageable to solve this problem in the end of the day. These people who actually still be, let's say, newcomer, for example, in one company, believing is not existing, is actually still somehow being pressured in the end of the day. In the end, in the comparison with the existence of hierarchy, the existence of hierarchy system in company, at the very least, this seniority will actually be able to be pushed down by people who have actually power, enough power for them, enough, let's say, rank for them to actually people to not be doing this type of thing. Let's just say the opening of question try to brings you the ideas of oh, what if this person of power is actually the one who caused this toxic company culture? We believe that on those ideas, we believe that it is actually way even if, for example, they're the one who has done it, even if they done that, we believe that it is actually way more easier to identify who's the prepper it is rather than the flat model, because in the end of the day, those discrimination comes with something that let's just say something that's way to implicitly rather than the pressure of the person who actually have in charge of that of this higher position. In the ideas of, we believe that even if, yes, we believe that the manageable of fear of them coming to actually pointing finger to the preparators if they have the higher ranking is actually way more harder, right? We believe that opposition will say that's that even if those happen, still even in the flat model, these newcomers actually in a way will actually be afraid enough to pointing finger to their senior, so they don't actually discriminate or let's say pressuring them to actually do something that they don't want to be. It's actually still the culture is still be there in NFD even if there is no hierarchy at the first place. Okay, going to the vulnerable actor of this of this motion that we believe in open governance, right? We believe that there are two vulnerable actors on this idea. First one, obviously the worker. Second of all, the corporation. So I'm going to elaborate on that phrase, right? So what's going on with worker? First of all, in the terms of seniority and juniority, I believe that I will say to you basically the ideas on how that junior will still in the end of the day afraid of their senior if their senior didn't reach out. Believe in the end of the day there will be still afraid, and if the senior is toxic, still that happen in every. Basically, even if there is no hierarchy, there's those things still happen. But let's say that we're going to the worst kind of hierarchy, those things happen and those things happens, right? We believe that in the end of the day, at least there are people who are actually able to responsible by in a way to pointing finger for to you for point of finger if there's happen in the end of days, right? And also we talk about worker, we talk about someone who needs to guide in the end of days, right? For example, if you're not newcomer in one corporation, you need mentor that actually are able to solve your problem, or helping you to be blended in this company culture. For example, we believe that if you are being in the flat model, you being stranded there and there is no someone that you can rely on. For example, there is no higher up that you can rely on. In a way, you're going to be confused, and the density of you as a newcomer being someone that make mistake within the existing worker is really high enough because you don't know what to do and what not to do in the condition of that office, for example. So even in the end of the day, even if in the day you as a worker, you still be able to expose with that toxic company culture, because in the day toxic company culture is evolving because not the idea because the existence of the hierarchy itself, but the idea of how the habit of that corporation actually work. If that corporation at the first place work with such a high pressure, that means the company culture needs to be done, and that's not only rely on hierarchy. And even if there is a flat model or hierarchy type of model, we believe that if there are toxic company culture, it should be pointing out by the HR. We believe that there are no differences between the hierarchy or and flat model if we're talking about eradicating the toxic company culture, which is that's why we regret on these ideas, right? Believing on the idea, at least if you have a hierarchy in the current existing company, it actually able to make the toxic company culture actually becoming something that are manageable and through, because there are people who have power enough to solve this. Because in the end of the day, who toxic or not is depend on how people act towards you, and not because they are the hierarchy or not. In the end of the day, talking about the companies, right? We believe that if you're looking with this flat models, we believe that the lack of capability of sudden decision making is going to be done for, because you need discussion before you actually able to make the decision. Different with hierarchy, even if yes, the decision actually going to be something that all sudden, but in the end of the day, those responsibility of decision actually come to one person that actually have one power enough to make sudden decision. In the end of the day, the capability of accountability is actually way more better rather than we spreading force to the people. In the end of the day, for example, if it's wrong sudden decision making to all, we believe that people who actually have more hierarchy are able to solve those problems neatly. Thank you. That's why I proudly to propose.
All right, thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that speech. I'm calling the leader of opposition to start their case.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, my gender pronoun is he or him. I'm okay with verbal POI. Just unmute yourself if you want a POI. If I got connection cut, please tell my teammates. Thank you. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. One framing under opening opposition. We agree that all things that OG have mentioned regarding toxic culture, seniority, pressures are always there under our both of sides. But what you need to understand, under your side of the house, the high and hierarchy and complicated regulatory structures will always also exist, right? The prerequisite to cut off the dozens and your problems is to make the flat organization, right? Why? A, with the less hierarchies, meaning bosses and upper or higher levels will always arise and available more and more. That is how the operations work on our side. That is why seniors and bosses always have more powers to begin with, to more oppress you, to more bargaining power. Under our side, meaning that this flat organization will have more same level regarding like this seniority will be minimized, at least under our side this kind of doses of like toxic culture and seniority will be minimized under our side of the house. B, with few regulatory structures, meaning we have easier way to actually have like a structure to actually have help this kind of employees that under oppressed, for example, that it meaning that we that have more a mechanism to actually counterbalance this kind of structure that all of you things have mentioned under OG. What missing on Gov, they have not characterized to you how the glorification looks like, how this glorification will manifest these people to actually have under the harmful that OG have mentioned in this debate. I'm going to argue two things in my speech. Number one, why process glorification coming to the lead of manifestation of people implement in the companies, and secondly, how the likelihood and impact of the companies will more like be beneficial to the employees and also answering a concern coming from OG. But before that, what the glorification looks like in the status quo. We think the glorification we think the firstly portrayal the status quo, right? Before I'm going to say about the glorification, I'm going to portray you the status quo right now. The portrayal of the status quo right now that most of companies have hard bureaucracy, right? Right in old methods of profit companies. Remember, OG doesn't explain about the contextualization of profit companies, right? Because profit companies have need of fast time to actually earn the profit, for example. It looks like the moment you want to voice out your ideas regarding creativity on ideas or reporting the workload to our bosses, we have to report to the different sector first, right? Of HR or to management documents. It means under the status quo, we have to cut off this kind of bureaucracy to have a short amount of time to actually create a productivity under our set of things. This impacts to consume higher time to work, this kind of old methods without this kind of the flat organizations. Secondly, portrayal with the glorifications. With the glorifications, it means under status quo, we already consume like a portrayal from the news or big trends that more and more employees and also government demanding to companies, right? This is exclusive because the status quo glorification, these employees or like through labor union demanding this kind of like cut off the bureaucracy and regulatory, for example. Right now, companies have more and more policies and more incentivized to actually fulfill the demand even if not complete, i.e. employees are demanding to cut the bureaucracy, demanding to few regulatory structures. And lastly, portrayal without the glorifications. They, under your side of the house, you will stop the progressivity. Why? Because the progress right now is coming from the glorification to begin with. Like, look at how the startup work, for example, because people demanding of like a amount of like low bureaucracy, for example, for them to have a shorter amount of time to actually having a workload to actually run and undergo their economic activities, right? To actually reporting, for example. That is why, like a minister of taxation in Indonesia, to actually have cut off the bureaucracy to begin with, for make it easier people also running to buy and to pay the taxes, for example. That is why this of organization is really important to making this kind of profit companies will be beneficial. And on your side, because the progress still not good and equal distributed right in the status quo, so we still need to glorify to make more incentivized to more companies to actually implement this kind of actions. Why no incentive to change this structure if not glorified? Firstly, because people on the top want to have more control and power to the employee, so they're already comfortable and don't want to change the structure. And B, society or later. the society still think that going to work in corporation means you have to work a traditional 9-act job that's rigid, that you have to always be afraid to boast and just shut up. And lastly, workers also think it is more and more stable and safe to work in the clear structure, even if they are being oppressed. On our side, when we glorify, we show that it is still for a for-profit company, it is also stable and safe and more flexible and freedom for them. And continue to that, I'm going to tell you about the argument, process glorification to manifestation of people employment in the companies. This is very, very important. What happens when there is glorification? People and employee of the companies right now have demanded to the government and also to their company, to the employees union or labor union to actually improving the quality of the bureaucracy. And when there will be incentivized to government to end the demand, they will also invite of asking the expertise or the professional or find the research to actually manifest to the and fulfill this. So how the likelihood why the companies will hear them? Because employees are the assets, right? Even in high and middle until lower management level, will always need this, right? To actually cut the time because they are too busy to waiting for high bureaucracy. In order to get promotion, for example, in order to get good career and portfolio of working, you need to have productivity as well. This also manifests into the company as well, because they need to run the best management possible to create the profit, because they are profit oriented to begin with. So these companies will always want to fulfill the need of the employees as well. We think this kind of likelihood is really proven under our side. This likelihood we answer why companies will be always incentivized to creating this kind of and following this kind of glorifications. So how did it manifest? Firstly, they will create the more of regulations of like a more cutting or bureaucracy, meaning that we have more shorter of time making a workplace, for example. Why glorification is okay? Because when glorified, so there will be a discussion and education on how to run company with flat organization model in the right way, how to maintain position while still in a flat organization model, but not becoming oppressive boss, how to show your opinion well in the company if you're in the bottom level, etc. So glorification is always need, right? Like even if there's a bad company that run this model, we think there's also check and balance coming from external, like for example, pressure from the workers because they have easier bureaucracy to focus on in the model, because the image that they want to maintain as a profit-oriented company that adapts this model and able to work out as well. We think it impacts to higher productivity, because right now we have more comfortable in workplace because you have more freedom and not test and not integrated by this kind of like hard bureaucracy. Like we have more ability to voice out as well, because we are not afraid to give opinions to our bosses, because we have to like give opinions to the same level of like bureaucracy organization, right? The conclusion, that is why we need glorification. Why productivity is really, really important, because the way for this is under our side, we provide more prerequisite for this kind of all OG concern we proud to oppose.
All right, thank you so much, Leader All, for that speech. I'm calling the Deputy Prime Minister to continue their case.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
If you want to give POI, you can just unmute yourself, and my speech will go in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we in glorifications of this flat organization is because we simply have something in fear or something in stress about in the current of what happening in the current or in the traditional cultures of workplace, right? The thing that we hate from the workplace is on how that the whole workplace is basically a stressful or of people trying their best in their job, doing more than they think they should, creating a lot of stress, a lot of burden in the mind, And at the end of the day, we also believe that stress could also make a toxic and a disruptive workplace, because it, well, I mean, you experience a bad thing to your job, you would of course experience a toxic workplace anyway. And this whole thing is being worsened by the way that power is being abrupted or being corruptly used in the traditional workplace organization structure, right? Okay, let's talk about how flat organizational could work in an actual perfect world. Ladies and gentlemen, flat organizational only works at a company where whatever those company orientations are on creative work. You at that said company, actually a company that produce something that could take quite a lot of time. So a lot of time, a big times of time that they have available for their consideration. Notice that this is actually so much indifferent with how a for-profit corporation work. For-profit corporation basically works out of opportunities on how that you could get profit, opportunities on you can get as much as profit as you can, and in much as little as time as you can, right? Now the thing is, this whole thing actually takes a big processing power in small amounts of time. So effectivity in working this kinds of process is needed, right? Let's talk about what they're on about with their whole the opponent's argumentation. Why does it they tell to you why a lot of pressure is actually bad in giving progress in this in this company, because it's so it actually burdening them so much in a way that they don't have to take their burden. For example, this hard bureaucracies that they've been going on and on and on and on. They say that most workers are actually hating the ideas of this hard bureaucracy. You need to do this before you do that, and then the after result. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, just know that in actually taking a consideration in a big company, and of course we also talk about a big for-profit company, we need to actually make a right decision. We need to make actually also a fast decision. So this bureaucracy exists used to filter this decision in a fast and in the best manner possible. We believe that the system that built this bureaucracy is in fact in its root is hierarchy. We need this hierarchy in a workplace, traditional hierarchy in the workplace, to take control of what kind of production that a company or corporation should make, and the fastest corporation should make. So we believe that that in order for us to take control or take opportunities for the profit, we also need to have a control in how that we can manage sources and time, which is something that doesn't really coming from the opposite side, and I think that's why we are better in the whole ideas on how that we could make a right decision, and consideration, and that is why we brought to propose. Thank you.
right, thank you very much, DPM, for that speech. Now, before I call the leader of DLO, may I please excuse myself for the toilet? It's just going to take like 1 minute. I'll announce when I'm back. Okay, I'm back. So calling Deputy Leader of Op to start their speech.
Hi, Kak, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, PI to unmute. Perfect General Penon, sure. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, Judge, note that on government side of the house, when they regret this glorification, they're regretting the policies that exist to cater, because calling out coming from this flag structure, things like opening up more to HR when there's abuse, things like executive have to be checked and balanced every couple of years, etc. We said that under our side of the house, we don't want to regret this progress. Couple of responses to OG. One, their whole case is that they say that this kind of glorification is useless because toxic cultures exist, because they're easier to identify the problem using hierarchy. There's no explanation how they're trying to fix it under the side of the house, other than that, right? Three responses is A, which that is not true. On your side of the house, it is even easier to cover up the things that things like toxic, for example, exactly because they have higher power than you, and there's imbalance of power. Because that most of the time, trouble happen from the higher up, right? The reason toxic environment exists is not just because the stress that they see, but it's exactly because they have more higher power that coming from the hierarchy, for example. That is why you are unable to address or identify that kind of problem. Even if you say that you want to point out the problem, this is not going to happen on your side. But B, even if you are able to identify, it doesn't mean that they cannot. It doesn't mean that they can do anything to change it, right? Because on your side, these people are still likely to be oppressive to you. It's because they have higher power than you. You are unable to call out your boss, for example. It's because they have leverage over your wages, over your own position. But see, comparatively on our side, it is easier to identify and actually fix it. Because one, there's pressure for the workers, exactly because they are easier bureaucracy to really want to voice out in the model. But secondly, because like my first call told you, because the image they want to maintain as a company that actually adapts to this model and able to work out there. So the framing here is two things. One, on our side, we're able to use the glorification to make sure that there's check and balance happening under our side of the house. But secondly, and so far as the concern about seniority that's going to happen under our side of the house, that is comparatively worse on their side for two reasons. A, because if we say that on their side of the house, this is not going to exist, on their side of the house is not going to exist, even if it's true, for example. If you, for example, you try to call to your senior, for example, to that it thinks that the seniority that there's problem, that is going to not problem solve it, but we said it's going to even push you to the lower the one who are going to be going to be oppressed more is people on the ground, because they're going to be even blamed, because they're going to say that, oh yeah, it's you make the senior to get called out from your boss because of you. So we said on your side exactly because there's different of power, for example, so then the seniority is going to be even worse on their side. Exactly because you in position is already higher than them, right? But B, comparative on the other side, because the power is quite symmetrical, for example. Therefore, even if their seniority is going to be based on them knowing more or based on merit, because you in position not exactly higher. Therefore, under side house, seniority is not, for example, able to be worse under your side house. Exactly because in position, for example, you are unable to say that, oh yeah, I'm higher than you. That's why I can criticize you, right? So we say the under side house, we already took on the whole point. But secondly, why does we say this is important, right? Why do we say structural change of company is going to happen on our side and better on our side? There are two reasons. A, was that because now the culture is trying to use this kind of flat company Meaning the way people interact within company is more based on, for example, your like family, for example, flexibility and freedom. Therefore, they have incentive to actually want to call out things, right? But secondly, this is important, right? Because even under outside the house, company who still have to use hierarchical company, for example, because they're unable to change their structure suddenly, then they're pressured to follow the trend, right? This means that they have to at least follow the regulation to provide more for the HR, for example, to actually listen to criticism coming from the employee. This means on our side of the house, we are able to ensure that even employees that not come from this kind of flat companies, for example, are able to get catered more. Even if they're unable to change to other companies that have this kind of flat structure, at least the trend in the society right now is to make sure that companies listen to their people, for example, to able to address the kind of problem and not just based on you being the boss or who become the employee. Therefore, as we prove this point, right? Coming to my assumption, then why do we say this is good for internal and the company itself, right? We said it's good for the workers in the ground, especially minorities, right? Exactly because we change the culture. When we voice out these people, for example, they are more brave to voice out because, for example, there's things like sexual harassment or racism on their side. They're afraid to do so exactly because the higher power have more power against them. Therefore, they stay silent. Because if they, for example, if they don't use this kind of structure, if they do something out of the rule or norm, they're going to have their position jeopardized. Therefore, they're less likely to want to voice on their side of the house, right? On our side of the house, when you make this a trend, for example, you're able to change. You are able to make people aware that when they have more freedom, for example, they're able to voice out better. They have the right to do so under outside the house. But B, for the management, right? Exactly because you let people, for example, to type criticism, it means that even if, for example, you have your pride that you criticize for them, but at least when you try to, for example, change the way structural management means, when you're able to listen to more criticism, what happening to the people on the ground, for example, what is they needed in order to make sure that there's the company's productivity is not being compromised, right? There's also another thing, right? If these people, for example, they are being racist or being able to like they do harassment, for example, you're able to identify this easier. It's because they have more incentive to try to force this out. So you can call these things out and get that away from your company, right? That's why you get a better company under our side of the house. But see, for the company, right, this is that there are more people who want to opt into the company because you compete that you provide the best environment for the company. So we say that when you make this kind of structure, for example, you make the company to have an incentive to change the way they make the structure, and then they also get this benefit for the productivity, right? But as my first speaker already told you, what do you say productivity is important for these people, right? Exactly because you need this kind of productivity in order to make sure that the company will get benefit, but also the employees to have the incentive to like get more incentive, like more healthcare or insurance, for example. This can only happen when you make the company into as productive as possible, right? So we say the way, so the reason we went over all benches because we already proved to you the most important thing is debate. One, because why the glorification is needed, right? So we say that even if CG want to say that they also want to use this good structure, for example, but they don't want to glorify it, we already told you that why they have no incentive to change structure if it's not glorified, right? A, because people at the top have more control and therefore they have the, for example, already comfortable with the position right now, therefore they don't want to change structure. But B, because society also think that if you go to work or go to 9-to-5 job in corporation, you have to be serious and not have this kind of freedom. But also lastly, because we want to make sure that the workers change their mindset, that even if, for example, they work in corporation, they have the rights to voice out, for example, they are also able to work in stable and safe workplace in this kind of corporation that have flat organizational things, right? So we say that on our side, we already proved to you two things. We are like the two important contribution. One, we said it's important to have this clarification because we don't want people to have abuse of power compared to their side. We fix this problem on their side structurally. But secondly, we said it's also important because we also get the principle and the productivity that are coming from these people, right? We said it's the most important thing. Therefore, like we are able to cater to the principle of them being able to voice out for the employees. We're able to cater to the most vulnerable actors coming from the ground because they're able to address this kind of problem. But secondly, this is also important for the productivity of the companies and also from the workers because they're more more comfortable in the environment they work in, and they want, for example, to be able to get more insured, more the benefit. Very proud to oppose.
Okay, thank you, DLO, for that speech. Before I call the member of government, I'd like to remind everyone to offer and give POI, just for the sake of engagement. So calling the member of government to open the debate in closing half.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
My gender preference is sure her. POI through chat box, please. So setting my timer. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, I do think that OG succeeded in analyzing the true context, and I'm SCG, I will try to clarify this flow of debates, and because they only focuses on how toxic and the pressure that exists in the company, it was with less explanation about and the elaboration about what is actually it look like, and I need to clarify all the things related to this debate. And from OO, don't imagine that this is a happy company where everyone become family and living happily ever after. In opposition, we imagine, please imagine that when you being a horse that need to carry out not only in your luggage but also everyone else, because there's no clear position. Secondly, when we talk about seniority, there is something that is very subjective, and at the end of the day, people in the company will focus on their work. The goals of the person who work in company is that they want to get money, they want to do the best work, and then they want to fulfilling their life because of they want to get the salary. It's not only a big deal for the person when we talk about the seniority in the workplace. So panels, we need to understand that in the company, we have to think and take the consideration about many things. In the flat organization model, we all know that there will be a little amount of the officers, a worker, and they need to do something and finish their job in the same time. There will be so many positions that at the end of the day will get unfair salary because of unclear job desk, because of complexity of the work itself, and because of intangible structure of the company. So under the side of the house, CG believe that why it needs to be glorified. I think it's not to be it doesn't need to be glorified, and why it is the better in our position that we support the hierarchy, because in order to divide the job desk classes, we need to know who will take the position in the very first in the very beginning. Second of all, I would like to explain why one person can do so many jobs. It will really give the harm thing, and also it will influence. First is productivity, second of all is mental health, and the third is work-life balance. As the extension of what actually has been done and said by OG, but they don't clarify and tell us the importance of these things. We need to understand that the existence of hierarchy of structural position in company is made to maintenance the officer and give them the hope, for example, to get or to achieve the better position. The higher position is shifted to get a better position at the end of the day. It will make them a spirit to doing their job rather than just having so many jobs in the same position. So under CG, why do we need to glorify these things, ladies and gentlemen? When there's less work, ladies and gentlemen, there will be so many mismatch in the work itself, because sometimes they are confused on what need to do. So in relation with the productivity that I've mentioned earlier, on the work itself, how it can effective when someone needs to do so many job desks, so many works, and it needs to be done in the same time, ladies and gentlemen. It is unmanageable, and it would not achieve the goal of the company itself. Rather than so why we need to glorify these things? Because I think this is not a good thing, and then they will be the person who do so many jobs will overwhelm. And as the second layer of the argument about the mental health for the worker itself, it is not impossible for the worker to get the depression because of they overwork. We need to understand that it will affect not only mental health, actually, in their physique, how they eat, how they taking care of their health, because it's because there will be so many burden of their job. And ladies and gentlemen, although it is true that many people need money to fulfill their life, it is undeniable that many people want to achieve the best salary for their life in position in the work. They need to take rest. However, in the organization, it will spend their time to work and work every time. So how can we expect it that they need to have a time for take rest, having a time to spend their time in their family, for example, and so on and so forth. Third, let's think about the middle management that is really important in this case. we need to understand that in the company, we need to have, for example, like the head of a certain unit, for example, the head of division, in order to intermediary between higher position and lower position. They will know what will become the necessity of their job desk and become the stabilizer or what is being wanted. For example, like with CEO and also the staff. This is very, very important to know that when the CEO wants to do something, we need to for example, like the head of division that I've mentioned earlier, for stabilizing, for telling the staff about what things should be done, and then the CEO itself, they couldn't talk directly for the lower position to them, because there is a middle position that can be the bridge for them in order to achieve the goal of the company itself. So why do we need to glorify these things, ladies and gentlemen? We need to have the deeper analysis that in the workplace, we need to have a clear management and clear structural of the company itself in order to create the manageable job desk, organized work, and under the side of the house, we believe that it doesn't need to be glorified. How under the side of the house, we believe that it is better in our side that I've delivered so many things in relation with why it shouldn't be glorified, because so many reasons that I've mentioned. And I would like to glorify that we need the hierarchy. We need to glorify everything related to the middle management of the company in order to create more stable company to get and to achieve their goal itself. So proud to be closing government and proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, member of government, for that speech. I'm calling the member of opposition to respond and start their case.
Oh, am I audible and visible?
Yeah, you're both audible and visible.
Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, please understand that the opening government didn't prove to you why the profit corporations would like to adopt this method when they leaning towards the happiness of the employers, when they actually only care about money, and money. And they also talk about they didn't prove to you how it would be conducted in the very first place. That has been answered by the opening oppositions. Actually, we're going to say that the hierarchy actually protects and preserves the toxicity and seniority of the employers, while they are still, of course, as they mentioned earlier, as they stated, there are still toxicity, but it is no longer protected by that long and powerful hierarchy on our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. So that is what differentiates us from the OG, ladies and gentlemen. The CG closing government also fails to deliver the borderline and the differentiations between glorifying this model. They only portray our models as no hierarchy models, ladies and gentlemen. Please understand that we do have hierarchy. We do have clear hierarchy, but there is a terminations that there should be amount of terminations to the bureaucracy that needed to achieve work balance in corporation management, ladies and gentlemen, to actually increase productivity in order to have a good reputations towards these good corporations, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm about to explain to you how we're going to support these glorifications of the flat organizations and the profit corporations. Now, a little bit extensions of what the opening opposition has already said, that now notice how in the status quo the oppressed feelings of the employees, for example, the saying for their mental health illness are these days are very oppressing, because they're working 8 to 5 hours a day, and some of them are even working overtime. For example, they're adopting this Japan culture that ain't aligned with the interests of the employees, ladies and gentlemen. We will prove to you on how actually flat organization model could promote their employees to have more productivity, because there's a less hierarchy and regulations that would be implemented inside of the corporations itself, ladies and gentlemen. Flat organizations models, first, flat organizational model isn't as tight or conservative as the non-flat organization model. For example, it creates much more play-wise ambience, easier coordinations. For example, you are in a staff of productions team that are about to be reporting monthly report towards your manager. You can communicate easily. There is no 100 times of revisions. There's terminations of the bureaucracy that we're talking about because you are afraid to approach him, to be getting the wrong side of him, even when you do nothing wrong as the employers or as the subordinates, ladies and gentlemen. And even for the worst case scenario, you got fired just because of it. So that is what happened in the status quo right now for the other models that that the government benches are actually offered you guys. And second, there's more chance to the employees bullying, ladies and gentlemen, that I will be extending and explaining more on my later substantive, ladies and gentlemen. But we are gonna talk here about first, why the happiness of employees are playing a great role in maximizing corporate management, especially in profit corporations. As we know that it increases the change that, the toxicity that I've been explained about, and it actually increases the changings of the staffs, or I named it resign styles employers. When the employees feel they're not happy with the environment, they will be most likely to resign from that company. And it will, of course, pain the management to again introducing or adapting to the new staff, or cost them even more time and money because the employees are prone to resign. There will be much more interview, much more wages MOU that actually not the interest of these profit corporations, ladies and gentlemen. That's why they need to adopt our models that we have been offered to you, ladies and gentlemen, because we know that profit corporations, they are focused on gaining profit. That are the characteristics of profit corporations. But it would still pain the management of that point. Of that changing stuffs, because the cycle on habits, on these habits are still going to be continued in the long term on their side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. Second, I will talk to you about how important is that glorifications on our side of the house in the perspective of customers. Why customers? Because the foundations of flat organizations, the foundation of even the great corporations is based on three things. First, human resources. Second, management. Third, customers. Ladies and gentlemen, in the human resources, we already proved to you how it will increase the resigning styles of the employers that will pain the management and the productivity of the company itself. Second, on the management, we have proven to you how it will burden towards the bureaucracy, how it would take much more time and much more process for actually the company to increase their work balance situation. And ladies and gentlemen, and the third, I will talk to you about the customers, how actually it is super easy to expose these corporates through online media these days, for example, Instagram or TikTok, and it will resulting in increases the cancel culture towards the customer, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, if we do have these employers that's reviewing their work styles in the previous company, they would be a bad image towards the corporation's structure, ladies and gentlemen. Online image is everything these days. This is how people assess the big capitals, the big companies, etc., through their customers, the reviews of the company's image. That's actually would be much more engaging in first decreasing the product selling, ladies and gentlemen. That is how far that could go. Second, there probably will be decreasing on the great human resources because they heard, oh, a company blah 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 is actually do some kind of slavery for their employers, ladies and gentlemen, employees, ladies and gentlemen. That's why it is very important, and it could actually, in a worst case scenario, resulting in a stocks plummet, for example, or even in a bankruptcy, ladies and gentlemen. Notice how much good quality of human resources run away from a Japan company because of its culture, because of its much more hierarchy, much more bureaucracy that the previous employer shared to the public. Notice how people run away from that kind of company. For example, Halloween's also are being judged because the one who got arrested, are they subordinates, ladies and gentlemen, not the higher ups. This is proof to you that there are many flaws in the other side of the models, which burden on human resources, management, and customers, ladies and gentlemen. That is all from me, and thank you.
All right, thank you, member of opposition, for that speech. I'm calling off whip to close government's case.
Okay. Before I start my speech, I would like to reset my title first. So before I start my speech, my gender preference is he or him, and for my POI preference is you can just say it or just type in chat box. Thank you. Okay, I will begin my speech very soon. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, panels. This scenario will most likely last for 1 until 5 years because they fail to acknowledge on how harsh the competitiveness of each company to sustain their company itself. So before I start my point of speech, I would like to certain things, brief up certain things that clarify under the opening government and also opening opposition key flaw that makes them fail to win in this today's debate. First of all, the toxic relationship, they state that they will be debunked because there is no gap at all. Well, we say they fail to acknowledge how toxic will the working experience will be, ladies and gentlemen. They fail to understand that this company will become recklessly demanding more and more work, and because they think it's justified, since they glorified that it should be done under the sake of the company's sustainability, right? So I think they fail to understand on that point because the characterization of for-profit company is mostly under the status quo right now. So secondly, they fail to understand that uncertain job desk will create a toxic competitive at the end of the day, right? Why this will likely to be happen, ladies and gentlemen? Under their side, this trend will happen because how company creates reward and recognition mechanism at the very end of the day. Well, let's take an example. Person A will get all of their job desk in the company, right? He will take all of the side tasks or even another task to have that recognition from this company, right? This will create a jealousy effect, and it's unhealthy, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day. Thus, why this kind of toxic and justifiable at the very end of the day, and compared to when we have this kind of systemic organization, we have this kind of check and balance, and thus under the side of the house, they fail to maintain this kind of scenario once again, ladies and gentlemen. So panels, a good work-life balance is a somewhat a dream and a main goals for us corporate workers, right? Thus a creation of a structural organization organized based on each individual job desk are needed to fully stabilize their working experience and ambience, right? Certain things that matter, which we are going to prove to you under today's debate. Firstly, why the concept failed to justify the status quo? Well, it is because how amusing the status will be, ladies and gentlemen. For the profit company, they need to sustain all of their resources as well, right? But also they need to value their workers. Why? Why so? Because in this mechanism, we have this structured organization, right? This will create an effective step up to accomplish goal. For the implementation, I will explain to you later in my argument. Secondly, why this become over glorification and turns out into a nightmare at the end of the day. And thirdly, I would like to explain to you why this situation comes to worse. Moving to my layer of argument here, I have 4 points of layer argument. First of all, regretting the glorification. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is undoubtedly fact that most of the company use this mechanism to pressing their human resource spend budget, right? They see it as a golden opportunity to give a glorious position like head of media, for the example, will most likely giving the interest to a job hunter, right? But the fact, ladies and gentlemen, they don't know the fact that they need to handle the copywriting, the edit of the video, the creating concept, or even being the own model of its production, right? Well, the outcome is how big is today's worker retention rate under the status quo, right? And the opposing side of the house also not underlining the status quo on how big the retention of today's worker, right? Because how overworked they are, and also how uncertain job desks are created in the society itself. Means that this trend will create a more and more stress environment, which will be more a common state to the society, right? Well, under our side of the house, we don't want this to be happen. Well, because we should stop this toxic cycle by not glorifying them and embrace more structured job desks later in the future, ladies and gentlemen. So secondly, company framing in society and how this will hurt them. Well, under the CG, we also want to protect this kind of company, right? We want to create a frame that this company have a healthy environment because they sustain their human resource and have a clear workflow, right? Well, this will likely happen under our side of the house because once they have a clear job desk about what they must do and want to is actually being controlled by their senior, right? And I think compared to all cases with which they will face the burnout, they will face the mismatch and also an uncertain workflow. And I think this will create a bad output, which is burnouts, and also workers will have this kind of stress, and also this at the end of the day will create a bad water to the company. We see that we want to protect this company by creating a bad review from the worker itself. So that's why we need this kind of stability at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, the idea of creativity, we say that the idea of creativity still happen under outside of the house and even become better. Why so? Because we see that now the structure of the job desk will be right. For the example, all the workflow will be clear and safe sound, right? If we create this structured mechanism. So under the opposite side of the house, they champion the idea about how they will live in this infinite samsara where they stuck into a stagnant environment and no developing ideation at all. I take that POI. Thank you.
Judge, please note that government have explained why all the harms like overworking is not going to happen on their side. The mechanism of check and balance were never explained even until government. So please don't buy their points. Thank you.
Okay, like what I explained to you, you said that this kind of mechanism will not create an idea of creativity of one individual in the company, right? Because you say that this will create an infinite samsara where they stuck into a stagnant environment and no developing ideation at all. Well, we say that you guys under the side of the house have failed to understand that this happened because of how each team are setting their goal and not how this become the main effect if we use this mechanism, right? Well, even if it is the case, even if it is the worst case scenario, it could be fixed by the coordination of HR department because they have the check and balance at all, which is the top management as someone who creates a strategy, right? Well, this is also under the control to HR as a work watcher, which we can also take that as a check and balance at the end of the day. Those initiatives of creating an ideation of creativity and development will be more effective because they work with procedures, and at the end of the day, it could effectively create a good ideation at the end of the day. Well, compared to if you only the one who involved in this ideation, you don't have the check and balance, you don't have the control from others, you execute it alone and will risk the future of the company at the end of the day. Well, we don't want this to be happen, thus we regret the ideation of flat organization workflow. And thirdly, about the seniority thing that is happen under our side of the house. Well, we say that the seniority is a thing that will commonly happen and not mutually exclusive to be the root cause of this engine. Why? Because this trend should be undergone to determine the level of the toxic of the environment, and we need to determine the root case, and it is too subjective at all since they only portray how this environment is to be eaten at the end of the day. So I think we should not glorifying this kind of flat organization at all, and we are proud to propose this case. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gov Whip, for that speech. I'm calling the opposition whip to finally close this debate.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, let me just set up my stopwatch. My POI preference would be through chat. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the late Abraham Lincoln once said that a house divided against itself cannot stand, which emphasizes the importance of harmony between a system. This is the main reason why here at Closing Opposition, we strongly does not regret the glorification of flat organizational model, because we believe that it actually strengthens the bond between employees and the productivity of for-profit corporations, which is super important because these companies are after money. And so the emphasis on money is we believe a crucial aspect in which why we believe that we support the glorification, because the flat organizational model strongly helps the company to get more revenue. Okay, so as the opposition whip, I would like to invite you all in. Let's take a review of what has happened in today's debate, starting off with the opening benches and with OG. Now, we believe that from what the Prime Minister has mentioned, they talked about how why the benefits of having a non-flat model is because in those non-flat model, when talking about seniority, they talked about at least those in power can push down on the seniors who's doing the bullying and etc. Now we believe that we have one response to this. We believe that this will likely not happen because those who are in power actually experience it for themselves for the seniority, and so they will be more likely for them to foster the seniority. Just like for example in college, that's why people who are seniors, people who are alumni are okay with bullying and in bullying during orientation because they themselves felt it. And so OG needs to prove that how come those who are in power will push down on seniority. And so we believe that the second response to that, we believe that logically, ladies and gentlemen, without the hierarchy, it's actually easier for employees to report to the HR because they do not have to fear about any hierarchy protecting the perpetrator of those bullying and seniority. In contrast, in which OG's world, there's a strong hierarchy, and so the employees are super scared to report to HR. Okay, now if we compare OO and CO here, we believe that we have many similarities, but the reason why CO still triumphs over OO is because we talked about the perspective of the customers, and that is also a crucial aspect in talking in regards to today's motion. But before I elaborate further on that, let's talk about the case from CG. Now, the first speaker of CG talked about one of the things they said was regarding promotion, and that it's going to be super hard in our side. While we believe that the opposite will happen, we believe that it's actually easier to get promotions on our side because the hierarchy is no longer there to protect several barriers. Barrier number one, barring promotion because of your educational status. Because, for example, even if you work there for 5 years, but because you didn't take, you don't have a master's degree on something, then you're barred from it, even though you actually can do a pretty good job. And these barriers exist in companies. And also the second barrier, which is nepotism, which is a very important thing in corporate management. Many people get jobs because of nepotism, because of those who are in power favoring people. And so that is why by not having the hierarchy, we believe that the issues of nepotism will be minimized, and so it will create a much more fair playing field. And the last barrier is discrimination based on sex, gender, and etc., because the hierarchy is no longer there to protect it all. And so we believe that promotion and it will actually be much smoother on our side of the house. Now, the second speaker of CG focused their case talking about more toxicity in corporation, especially because there's no clear job desk. We believe that in the flat model, it doesn't mean that there's no management at all, in which we believe this is the logic of CG. However, we will still play by the rules. We will say to that, even if there is no clear job desk, we believe that it'll actually increase the productivity because then employees have a bigger chance of them proving themselves. Because if they see that their fellow workers is being lazy and not doing the job right, then they can be the ones who actually do the job right and prove to their commanding officers that they're worthy of promotion and actually can do a very good job. And so we believe that even in our worst case scenario, which will most likely not happen, the productivity will still be better than their side of the house. Now, let me elaborate on why CO's case is actually still better than every other case here. And so, starting off, we believe that the reason to glorify the flat model is because it increases the productivity of the company by giving more flexibility, and reasons to that has been explained by my first speaker, talking about mental health of employees, more equal job opportunities because there's nepotism is now minimized. And we believe that because those in the upper part of the hierarchy, if in the non-flat model, those in the upper part of hierarchy has more power to influence people, including the HR recruitment. And so those with connections to those in power in the hierarchy have more privileges to get jobs easier. And so we believe that with less hierarchy, the recruitment process would be much more fair. And The second thing, one of the cases of CO is that we talked about the image of the company. And because we believe that in today's social media era, image is everything, and that since non-flat model are very prone to toxic environment, and since now it's super easy to expose toxicity on a company on through TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and etc. And so this will portray a very bad image to the company and increases the chances of boycott and hate speech, because and so by glorifying the flat model, this will incentivize corporation to apply the flat model so that it's safer, because it minimizes the chance of any toxicity. And so my first speaker has talked about the example of Holy Wings, and we believe that this is a super important case because the hierarchy was there to protect themselves and not those at the bottom to be blamed. And that's what the reason why people were mad. Sure, people were mad because of the original poster promotion that they did, but the fact that the hierarchy enabled those on top to be safe and sacrifice their subordinates, this is the reason why people got mad. Because right now, people and consumers have a conscience regarding the products and services that they use. And so that is why people were very upset that the Holy Wings management did such a cruel thing. And so that is why from the perspective of the employees, the management, and the customers, we believe it is super important to glorify this. And that is why as CEO, we're very proud to oppose. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for your speeches. That marks the end of this round. Please stay in this room while me and my judges deliberate. I've made a breakout room. Wait, I'm trying to open the room. I think it's open now. Yeah, okay. So all my judges can just join room 1 whereas the debaters can just like wait here for the oral adjudication. So yeah, thank you everyone and good luck. Just wait for the OA.